Okay, today is November the 19th, 2022. My name is Karen Neurohr. I'm a professor at the Oklahoma State University Library in Stillwater, Oklahoma. But this evening I'm in Tulare, California, and I'm here to do an interview with Bernis Wagner, who was a niece of Wilma Elizabeth McDaniel, the Okie poet. So thank you very much, Bernis, for allowing me to do this interview with you. I really appreciate it. We've tried to do this for a few years,
yes,
and so it's nice that it is finally happening. So tell me a little bit about yourself, please.
Well, I was born May 18th, 1941 in Klamath Falls, Oregon. My parents were Keith and Laverne McDaniel. Both are deceased. My dad was a photographer, and at the time they were married. And so they decided jointly to have me stay with my grandparents in Oakland, Oregon, while they continued to travel in the photography business. So I lived with my grandparents from, my grandmother says, 1 week old until the 4th grade. There were some times when I was with my parents when I was a year old. I know I was in Olympia, Washington. My dad worked on ships in the shipyard because he couldn't go into the service because his brothers were all in, and they only took so many sons from each family. So he was exempt, but he worked in the shipyards. They traveled while I lived with my grandparents, which was a wonderful, wonderful life for me. This is my grandparents, Carl and Elizabeth Miller. And I had a very wonderful childhood with them. And every summer, but probably from the time I was like 3 on, because my sister was born in 1945, and my parents were in Woodlight, California, which is real close here, for a year, and I was down here with them. And then we went back to my grandparents. I loved coming to Tulare every summer. We were just a wonderful, loving family with my grandma, Anna, and my Aunt Wilma, and Aunt Opal, and Uncle Roy, and Uncle Vern, Uncle Kenneth. All of my uncles were just adorable. When I was around 7, believe it or not, my sister and I started riding the Greyhound bus from Oakland, Oregon to Tulare every summer. We had our money clipped to us, and Grandma made us big lunches and everything, and the bus drivers helped us transfer in San Francisco, and I would come down and spend the summer in Tulare with my relatives here. And we did all sorts of wonderful, wonderful things. Usually we went to Pismo Beach, because my parents would be home for like a month, and we would go over there. Aunt Wilma always went. She was just wonderful with us kids. She had all sorts of activities always planned for us.
Like what?
We were really into paper dolls, and we had towns and all sorts of things, and we made clothes. We read a lot. We didn't cook much because she was not really a chef, but we did things like walk on the beach every day and have soup on the beach over a little campfire and do marshmallows. I remember coming down, and there's these Nutty Buddy ice cream cones. They were 5 cents. And so every time we got to Pismo, we would just as soon as we could go down to this little market to get our ice cream because they didn't have it in Oregon. And one year they raised it from 5 cents to 10 cents. And we were standing there just shocked.
Oh.
And the man, the store owner, just felt so sorry for us. So he let us have, for one time, we got to buy them for a nickel. I lived in Oakland until the 4th grade when my dad retired from the photography business. And he bought a ranch in Timber. And so then I started living with them until the 8th grade. And then I went to boarding school, Catholic boarding school, Ursuline High School College in Santa Rosa, California. I graduated from there.
In what year?
In 1959. I attended Santa Rosa Junior College for Business, and then got a very, very good job as an accountant at this business. Let's see. We lived in Kingsville, Texas. My husband was in the Navy, Navy pilot, and we lived in Kingsville, Texas. And then we moved to San Diego, and then to the Travis Ranch that my dad owned, and we ran that for them. In 1963, my first child, Lisa, was born, a wonderful, delightful redhead. And we, 3.5 years later, Samuel was born, my first son. And in 1972, Aaron, our snow baby, as we called him, was born. And we lived on a ranch in Eastern Oregon, which we loved very much. But my husband was ill, so we decided we'd move to Roseburg, Oregon, where we started a plywood business, which was easier on him. During this time, I worked on the ranch, of course, because we were running it. And then I worked for the News Review paper in the accounting department, and went to real estate school. I graduated from Norm Webb College and got my principal broker's license and own my own company, Century 21. And I retired on my 80th birthday nearly 2 years ago. And I enjoy being retired. I'm married to Leo Finn. We've been married 11 years. I inherited 6 sons, and he inherited 2 sons and a daughter. And Lisa is the oldest of all of them. So the boys were really happy to have a sister. I loved all my trips down to visit with Wilma and Opal, and everyone who came down every summer until I was in high school. It was a wonderful time. Families are so important. And even though people today would say I had a dysfunctional childhood, I did not. And Uncle Roy was very inspirational to me. He loved me like a daughter, and we had many great times together too. Wilma always rode in the front car if we went anyplace. We had her little hat on, and told Roy how to drive, even though she couldn't drive. I was married in 1959 to my first husband, Gary Wagner, and of course we had the three kids, and he passed away 10 years ago, and he was a good husband, a pilot, and life just flew by. And here it is, I'm 81.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay. So tell me more about your time with the family here in California. Tell me about your grandmother, Anna McDaniel.
Grandma McDaniel was just a sweetheart. We worked out in the garden a lot in the summers when I was there, and in her flower garden. She raised many, many vegetables, and we canned a lot. We didn't freeze then like we do today, but she was cooking and taking care of us, and I just loved her very much. I can't remember how old I was when she passed away, but there was always Wilma.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I remember is my Aunt Wilma and Opal and Grandma's naps that they took every day. And they would, at 2 o'clock, they would lock the screen door and have my sister and I out on the front porch, usually with our paper dolls or books and lemonade. And for 2 hours, we would be out there while they took their naps. We did lots of walking because Wilma didn't drive. And I remember eating cucumbers, eating too many, and getting very sick and had to go to the hospital. And we had to walk.
Oh.
So that had to stay overnight. So that was a big memory for me.
Mm-hmm.
We did things like to go to Mooney's Grove, which was a park out of Tulare that was a lake, a huge lake with boats. And Uncle Roy would paddle Aunt Wilma and Tana and I around this lake. And only in my later years did I realize that it was really a pond. The boats were real little.
Oh.
And I wish I would not have gone back to see it because it changed my memory of it. After I was married, I lived in Santa Rosa, and Aunt Wilma and Aunt Opal would come up and visit at least once a year. They'd come on the Greyhound and visit us. Aunt Opal drove, but most of the time they came on the Greyhound. I think it was just simpler for them to come. They came to my wedding, my graduation from high school, when I got my certificate from Santa Rosa Junior College. They were very proud of me and our family. We had lots of holiday meals. Usually we spent Christmas here in Tulare. And it was my Uncle Vern's birthday on Christmas. So we always had a big celebration for his birthday. And after I was married and moved to Eastern Oregon, I didn't see as much of the McDaniel family. Uncle Roy came up a lot to the ranch, but we would usually go down every couple of years. And then we moved to Roseburg. And, when we were in Santa Rosa, we had an airplane and we flew down to here, and about every couple of years, and the same from Oregon. Wilma loved to go flying. Nobody thought she would, but boy, she climbed right in that plane and went. And time goes by. Always sent her letters and birthday and cards for every occasion. And she loved to hear about the kids and what they were doing. She came to Lisa's marriage, her wedding, but not to the other two because she was too frail to do that then. Her poetry was really a surprise to me because we never talked about it. I did she used to let us sort her box with her notes in it. She called it her notes. And so we would lay them all out and turn them the right way and stuff, but really not realizing the importance of them. She was sickly. That's what my dad always called it. Be very gentle on Aunt Wilma because she's sickly. Well, when I got to talking to the ladies that we visited with today, and they go, Wilma's sickly? No, she wasn't sickly, but she had a different part of her life that was different than when she was with family. So that was kind of interesting. When I lived in Roseburg, my husband and I started coming down, Gary, at least once a year to visit and help Grandma with anything that she might have had, to do around the house and things. And time just flew by, and here we are.
Did you ever have any knowledge or recollection that your grandmother ever learned to drive?
No, she did not drive. It's just because Uncle Roy would take her to church, and Wilma would walk, if I remember, or Uncle Roy would take her. But she did not drive.
Okay. Did you go to church when you came and visited, you and your sister, with Wilma?
We went to church with Grandma.
And what religion? What was she?
She was Baptist. The family was Baptist, except Wilma converted to Catholic. And I went to Catholic boarding school. I don't think I put. So I might have gone to Mass with her a few times, but it doesn't ring a bell much. So,
was your grandmother in a fundamentalist Baptist church?
Yes, she was. Very much so.
Do you have any memories or stories about your grandfather?
My grandfather passed away when I was between 2 and 3 in, I believe, Olympia, Washington. And I have a couple pictures of myself with him. Not very much. Unfortunately, he was an alcoholic, so he, wasn't in the picture a lot. And there were sad times with my grandfather too. I don't know if did you interview?
I haven't heard much about him. What I have heard was that he was living apart from your grandmother, and your grandmother was in Washington and he was in California when he became sick and passed away.
I thought he passed away in Washington, but I was young then, and I knew he just wasn't in the family anymore. So.
Did alcoholism run in the family?
I think it did with the men.
Sometimes that's can be common. Yeah. So you talked about your communication with your Aunt Wilma. Did you talk on the phone as well as corresponding?
Yes, we did. She gave the best advice.
Oh, like what?
She was a single lady, never married, maybe had one boyfriend in her life, but she could give the best advice if you were having a problem with your marriage or just whatever it was. She gave the best advice. Just hang in there, or be supportive and all that. And I always admired that of her, because she would just come through with the best information okay, calm down, and because I confided in her a lot. My mother and I were not close, but I was very close to my dad, but not to my mother, whose birthday is today, would have been 100 years old. So I think as you get older and you have your own family, you don't always see your grandparents as much, although we were very close. And I was
tell me what you ever heard about the Cherokee heritage that we've heard about in the family.
Aunt Wilma always shared that we were Cherokee. She indicated that I was like 1/8. I think I probably was 1/16. I thought it was my grandpa that was a Cherokee, but it was the grandma, I guess. Anyway, her parents, one of them was full-blooded Cherokee. And she didn't say a lot that they did activities around it, but that we should be proud of our heritage and never forget that you're American Indian, Native American Indian, and always respect people from all nations. And she talked somewhat about the Trail of
Tears.
That they came from maybe Missouri. I've kind of forgotten where it was. But it always interested me. But they didn't talk a lot about it, and my dad didn't talk a lot about it either. It was like they pulled the curtain down with back history, think about tomorrow, not yesterday. I don't think that Aunt Wilma ever worked. She might have babysat or something. My dad supported her $500 a month until she turned 62 and got her Social Security. And then she was on her own because she got that amount. But my mother used to say, she'll get that money before food goes on this table. They took care of their families. The boys were all loved their sisters and took care of them. Some of the boys were close to Wilma and Opal and Grandma, and some weren't. My dad and Uncle Roy were the closest. Uncle Vern passed away earlier, so you think back 40 or 50 years ago when they were no longer here. And I saw they would come up to the ranch. Harold and the different boys would come to our ranch in Eastern Oregon, but we didn't see very much of them. And they weren't married, or if they were divorced. I understand I have 2 cousins from Uncle Vern, but never met them, and 3 cousins. And Stephen was Kenneth's son, and we saw him at Christmas a few years when he was little, but never met the girls, Vern's children.
Okay, I have a list of the siblings here. So if you want to share, because it's hard to piece together some of the family, and that kind of thing. But Alan was the oldest, and he married Inez and adopted her children, I think, but he died young after they moved here, was my understanding. Did you ever hear stories about Alan?
No. Was he the one that was shot?
Yes. Yes. Okay.
And that happened up around Livingston.
Yes.
It was a sad time, and no one talked about it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then Vern was next, and he had 2 daughters.
As far as I know, but never did I meet them or his wife,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't believe he ever married again,
Okay.
or maybe he never divorced and wasn't with her. I don't know.
And then was Roy the third one, or your dad?
No, Roy was before my dad.
Okay.
I think it was Roy and then Wilma.
Okay, I had it wrong. So it's Vern, and then Roy, and then Alan, and then Wilma.
Because I thought Vern was the oldest, but then I thought, well, maybe
Yeah, that's correct. I didn't put these in the right order. Okay, and then your dad and Wilma were just 2 years apart.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And Opal and Kenneth.
And Harold.
And Harold. Let's see, was he younger?
He came after your dad.
Okay.
Yeah, he was 2 years after your dad. Then Opal, and then Kenneth was the baby.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So as far as you know, those were the only cousins. And Stephen, you've lost track of.
Mm-hmm. I've searched and searched, went on,
Huh.
and never have heard anything.
Mm-hmm.
And the ancestry did not bring him up, so he could be deceased.
He could, yeah. Okay. All right.
And someone said that
Mm-hmm.
Kenneth's wife changed her name. Maybe she, remarried or something, because he died of a heart attack, I believe.
Okay. When you would come and visit Wilma, did they live in more than one place that you remember visiting?
Visited on F Street
Mm-hmm.
when she lived with Grandma and Opal and her. I visited her when she lived in Hanford. I did not visit her in Clovis. I think that was before.
That was before you were born,
Mm-hmm.
I think.
And from Hanford, they moved over here in an apartment, and I think I went there once. It was like by a playground or something. So,
Mm-hmm.
And then my dad and Roy helped her get into the apartment on Blackstone.
Mm-hmm. Where she spent her last years.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. What do you remember about your Aunt Opal?
She was flamboyant. She married a Portuguese man. Forgotten what his name was. He was a delightful man. From what I heard from that story, is that Opal couldn't conceive, and so his parents were very upset about that, and eventually they divorced.
Oh.
And they lived in Fresno, and then she moved back. I think he moved to Hanford, and
Mm-hmm.
so.
Did you ever hear of Wilma having boyfriends?
My recollection from my dad and Roy, and maybe only from my dad, was that she had met someone and he died in the war.
Oh.
And she never had a boyfriend since then.
Hmm.
They didn't talk about things like that.
Mm-hmm. You talked about her coming down when you graduated and when your
Mhm.
daughter graduated. So, what do you remember about her feelings about education, and if she had any teachers who influenced her when she was young or
She
schooling?
never talked about her education.
Mm-hmm.
They were all very poor. My dad had like a 6th grade education. He came out to Livingston when he was 12. He rode the rails, and he came about 5 years before the family came. And 12 years old, he established work ethic and worked and made enough money to send back to them. And I didn't always believe that, but as I visited with our newfound family, I found out that yes, that was true. He did come and work for them to come, and then they came later to Livingston.
Mm-hmm. Were any of the other brothers here when he came?
Now, they could have been. My dad didn't talk about them. Roy was not, because he was still back there and he drove the car out here. Now, maybe he went back and did that. The boys were in the service. Roy and Harold, Vern, Kenneth, were all in the military. So I think they, as soon as they could, they went in the service.
Mm-hmm. So the photography business that your father and mother worked at and established, Roy did photography also, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Did they work together?
They did for quite a few years.
Mm-hmm.
The three of them worked together. They would go in the small rural areas of the country and take pictures of, kids out in the country, and then they would develop their, what did they call that? Anyway, they took the prints back to the people, and they would pick out what they wanted, and then they would send it to Woodlake, and I believe that's where Roy was. Roy did that part of it. And then my mother, before they took them back to the people, she tinted them.
Oh.
Before they had,
Color film.
Yes, and it was beautiful what she did.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Did they take pictures of you and your sister?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any of those?
No, I haven't seen any of those. Yeah.
So Wilma didn't probably have any.
Well, I don't know what I've seen some of the archives, but I haven't gone through them closely to know everything that's there. Did your mother enjoy traveling, you think?
I think she did.
Mm-hmm.
Because she did that over raising my sister and I.
Mm-hmm. Did she get along with her grandmother? You said she didn't. She and her mother didn't get along well?
No, I didn't get along with my mother.
With your mother, okay.
Yeah. My mom got along
with her mother.
With her mother and dad.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think she had the best relationship maybe with the McDaniels here. Wilma and Opal were very protective of the boys.
Oh.
He didn't want them to have girlfriends, and even when Roy was in his 80s, he had this delightful lady friend, and they just thought it was terrible at 80 to have a girlfriend or whatever. So they were pretty protective about that. And so they didn't like my mom as much because she's the only one that stayed married to the family. The others ladies left.
Mm-hmm. So you said that you didn't really know a whole lot about her writing. Maybe part of that was since she didn't publish until she was older and you knew her and spent more time with her as a child. Did she encourage other people to write, or did she ever encourage you to, or did she provide paper and pens and
No.
no?
No. She would send us her book every book that she had, she would send us one. But she really didn't talk about her writing. And when you pick up a book of her poems and you're not used to that type of poetry, sometimes you don't understand it. What is this? But I always enjoyed it because I love to read and all that type thing. So,
does anything in particular stand out about her poetry to you?
It wasn't poetry that you learned in school where things rhymed or whatever. It was just a simple statement, so to speak. And not until I was older did I really come to understand and enjoy and love that type of poetry. She just didn't talk. That was a separate life for Wilma. And after Opal passed away, it was like there was the family, and then there was the poetry and the people that she knew from that, because she never talked about those people. And if she was having anybody over to her apartment that had to do with poetry or any of that, she would ask Roy to leave.
Oh.
So she didn't want him there. So, she was very secretive of that. In fact, did you hear the story of her will?
No.
Roy was leaving everything to her, and she was leaving everything to Roy. And about a year before she passed away, Roy she was in the nursing home, he had to go to her apartment, which he did every day to check things, but he discovered her will, and she had changed it and left everything to Betty and Trudy and the publisher Jim, and nothing to Roy. And it really hurt him immensely. And he called me, and I came down right away. And at that point, Betty would not talk to me about, that. So Roy did not like Trudy. He felt that she was, using Wilma, not Betty, because Betty was Roy's attorney also. But there was a difference in the way Wilma was treated, and he thought that they were persuading her to change everything, because she had quite a bit of money. And so it went to them. So, but that was her business, except she hadn't shared that with Uncle Roy.
It's too bad that they weren't communicating about that. Yeah. Okay, I heard today that you're on the cover of one of Wilma's books.
I am.
Tell me about that.
It's a picture of my husband and I on our wedding day. I'm in my wedding dress. And she did that as a gift to me. So it's very, very special. And she was there. And it was wonderful. And my grandma and But Wilma and Opal and Grandma and Roy were the main people that took care of the ladies,
Mm-hmm.
the girls.
Mm-hmm.
So I am on a cover. It's kind of fun.
When she sent you books, did she inscribe them?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
She did.
Mm-hmm. Did she send you any of the tinfoil angels that she cut out of gum wrappers? She would cut out little angels. No.
No.
How about any like little cut out paper dolls or
Paper dolls were a big thing. From the time I was little, we had paper dolls, and she would make, the little things that you bend back,
Mm-hmm.
put the dress on, and she would make those and glue them on, and she would make clothes, and then when you went the next time, it would be a different dress on the same model, and things. So
Mm-hmm.
that was a big thing,
Mm-hmm.
the paper dolls.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that vividly.
Where were your was she and the other Opal and the uncles that you were close to? Would you say that they were creative and artistic?
I wouldn't say Opal was, because I never seen everything. My dad was a storyteller,
Oh.
and he very much so, and my kids could tell you a lot of stories about the stories that he would raise up from his belly and get them to come up, and spit out. I think he was creative like Wilma. But nothing else really that was they were artistic, or they couldn't have been in the photography business, and
Mm-hmm.
the angles that he used to, my dad would say, I took a picture of the most god awful ugly baby that I've ever seen, and the pictures would turn out just beautiful. So
Did he have an appreciation for art?
no, although I have lots of artwork and I'm very much into it. My husband's an artist. No, they didn't have. I can remember a picture in the dining room of a man praying over the table. It's kind of a picture that you see a lot of places.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that being in the house, but I don't remember anything else. And Trudy took most everything out of Wilma's apartment. So some things that were valuable to the family, she had already removed before Wilma had even passed.
Some of her poetry has names. I've read this, and I can't tell you where, but that in her poems where she talks about Rory, that is really Roy. Or when she talks about Kenneth, she would call him Buster in her poems.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any knowledge of any of that?
No, because I didn't catch that when I would read them.
Okay. Do you have any favorite poems that she wrote?
Since I had a stroke, I don't remember as much, but I read every book. Mm-hmm. And I highlighted in them the things that I liked. I loved the things about walking down the road, things that she would see, but I really don't have one. But that spurs my interest to go back through those.
Mm-hmm. Did anything ever surprise you about your Aunt Wilma?
think I was surprised that she always came across as being real sickly, and that's what we grew up with. But in visiting with the people at the different things I went to, once it, Jim and some of them came out and they would be talking, and I would say, well, Wilma couldn't do very much. And they go, oh, what? She could do anything. And so that was a different side of her that sometimes I think maybe she was sickly because that gave her more attention from the boys. She called them the boys.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I loved her the way she was.
Do you remember how she dressed? What kind of clothes she wore?
Mm-hmm. She was always cold.
Mm.
So she always had on big sweaters or shawls, hat. She dressed kind of funky.
Explain what you mean by that.
Mismatched. Things that didn't fit her well. We always gave her a sweater or some type of clothes for Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And her birthday was right at Christmas too. So both her and Roy loved vest, sweaters, and things. She wore heavy-duty shoes. But she was mostly bundled up.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever know her to wear makeup?
No.
No. What about fixing her hair?
I think she might have gotten permanents and then just washed it and let it dry.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes it would be straighter than other times, but I don't remember her ever curling her hair. And she never worked with my sister and I's hair.
Mm-hmm.
We brushed our own hair and took care of it.
Do you think maybe she didn't care that much about clothes?
Yes, that's exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And makeup and all of that was something she was not interested in.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever know her to have an ongoing rummage sale to support the church or the church endeavors or anything?
No, but she would ask for donations to the Catholic Church all the time, for different things that was going on. But no, because we weren't here. Usually when we were here, it was kind of a fun holiday month or two, when we did things like that. But
so today, people came together for a celebratory event at the Tulare Historical Museum, and it was dedicating the museum as a national literary landmark in honor of your Aunt Wilma.
mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit about what you think about today and everything that transpired.
I think today was most wonderful celebration, a climax to her life. I had to look up what all that meant because we don't have it in Oregon, or else no one has received it. But I think it's just an extraordinary award that she received. This humble woman, to be the first woman in California to receive it. It wakes you up to realize that I should have paid more attention to her work. I don't think that Opal was that supportive. I could be wrong, because I think the two of them kind of vied for attention from the brothers. So, but today was just so wonderful to see the people that were there, the mayor, a judge, people from the museum. Most of the directors were there. They didn't have to be. And you know who was the most favorite? There was a Latino family that lived close to Grandma, and they were there, and the lady must be, I would say, well, she was an adult with children when I was little, and she came up to me and she recognized me as being, Grandma's grandchildren that came from Oregon, and they were just wonderful, down to earth people. They weren't there for any look who I am or anything. They were just wonderful, and they still live on F Street.
Oh.
And I think that was the nicest surprise and treat of the whole day. Besides meeting you after all of this time.
Well, thank you. Do you remember their family name?
I think it was Nunez.
Nunez.
And who got the guest book?
The museum.
And I can probably call them and see if they can look through there to find that name. Because the man, and you're meeting so many people and they give you your name and it's gone instantly.
Right.
But he's going to send Lisa a copy of the paper.
Oh, good.
Because, we couldn't find any. But I'm going to call the newspaper and see if I can at least get a tear sheet.
Mm-hmm.
Those people were wonderful to see. Did not see anybody from the restaurant, and they were neighbors also.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not for sure. We drove by the restaurant, and there is a restaurant there, but they must have sold it or something.
So did you drive around Tulare when you came?
Mm-hmm. We always go to different places. That we had a out Tulare Avenue. There was a strawberry patch out there, and I don't know, for the last 20 years, no matter what time of year we were here, we would drive out there and they would have strawberries, and they would go, "Oh yeah, you people from Oregon." Well, it was closed, but I could see a small patch where maybe they were going to have more.
Mm-hmm.
We would go to the park. We went to a lot of movies. Believe it or not, we would come down, and Opa and Wilma and Roy would go to bed early, and then we would all go over here to the Galaxy movies. So it was a big thing, because in Roseburg they had a theater with two showings, and that was it. So that was always fun to come down. And fruit stands, we loved to go to the fruit stands. And did you notice the flowers that were being sold around town?
No.
Every corner had people with big bouquets of flowers.
Huh.
I miss that. Grandma used to have wonderful flowers. Now, I never noticed Wilma or Opal ever working out in the garden or doing anything out there. But I think my love of flowers and gardening came from Grandma.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that you would help them with canning and putting up produce in the summer. Did that seem like a chore and a lot of work to you?
No, because I still do it today. And there's something about seeing 20 quarts of carrots canned, or tomatoes, or corn in your pantry that just makes you feel so good.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not always making it, and everything, but
Do you grow your own vegetables? Or do you go to a farmer's market?
now we go to a farmer's market.
Mm-hmm.
We used to have a big garden, but we're getting older, and and then if you want to go someplace, you have to get somebody to come and water.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have a garden. We have a lot of flowers, which Leo's brother comes over and waters, but Lisa's living there now, so but Uncle Roy loved to go for drives, and so did Wilma. So that's one thing that we would do, was drive way out in the country. We would go over to the ocean, the beach, quite a bit, and just drive around and look at the cotton growing, which I didn't see any this time. So they've taken it all out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just happy memories here.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that Wilma is at the rest area going south?
I haven't been there on this trip, but I visited there before. So I think in the morning I'll try to stop by there.
We were here, and we were going on south to Yuma, and we stopped at that rest area, and Lisa came and said, "Mom, you won't believe Aunt Wilma's the rest area."
Mm-hmm.
And there she was.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to drive out there in the morning, see if she's still there. So.
Are you talking about the cemetery?
No, the rest area.
No, I didn't know about that. Okay.
Uh-huh.
I thought we were talking about the cemetery. So
we went to the cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
Today I was disappointed in what Betty did for Roy's stone. It was not what I paid for, but the plaque itself was, but it's in some horrible cement. But I prayed about it and decided that leave things alone, Bernis, but it was great seeing all of them. Lisa took a picture of the row of McDaniels.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's special to have a lot of your relatives in the same place.
Mm-hmm.
So.
What do you think? I started this project because I felt like people in Oklahoma didn't know about Wilma McDaniel, and she was writing about Oklahoma
Mm-hmm.
throughout her life. What do you think people in Oklahoma should know about her?
She was a strong woman. She went along with her family, wanting to move. When you're 17, to leave your home and go someplace else is hard, especially I think for women back in those days, because usually they were already engaged or married or seeing someone. I think that reading her work tells you what a true Oklahoman went through during the Depression and everything, and get your imagination working on how did they live, where did they get the material for their clothes, things that very hard for poor people to come by, but we never thought that. The only, my dad would tell funny stories about living in the watermelon patch and eating watermelon every day. That was what he ate all day when he came out here. But none of them ever complained about the hardships. They would talk about them, but not how terrible it was and how terrible their families were to put them through that. I thought it was just true grit, a good story to get them out here. And they never ever mentioned Ellen being shot. I had to find that out. It was always, well, Ellen died when he was young. You know? So they kept things like that private.
How should she be remembered?
Wilma should be remembered as a kind, gentle spinster who actually loved men. She had more men friends sometimes, I thought, than women friends. But she did everything at her own pace. Whether it was eating, if you went to a restaurant with Aunt Wilma, you better plan on being there for 2 hours. Because she took a bite, put her fork down, chewed that bite, took another bite. That's slow, determined way. She loved us, and she told us that. She was happy that I think that she had us as nieces and family for the future. Although I wish she would have shared more, but I wish all of them would have.
I think we all wish that with our family.
So I'm trying to do that with my family, is share more. And this is really good because this is our family. And by hearing this and seeing these books, and the same with my husband's, the children's father, to carry on that. I think we've forgotten that in our lives. They're so busy. And I hope the people in Oklahoma think about that too, this is what it was like when your grandmother or great-grandmother was alive. This is what they did. Because, you think about women and their personal products that they had to wash every month and all of that. There's things that our ancestors did that were hard, and make your own soap and everything. So I just think she's a wonderful, wonderful legacy. I hope people will come to Stillwater and Oklahoma State and visit and see what she has there. Do you have a large collection of things, or not very much? Or
we have the largest collection in Oklahoma at this point.
Of Wilma?
Yes. We have almost all of her publications. I think we're lacking 3. In many cases, we only have 1 copy. And then we have things that have been donated, correspondence to a few different people. I think she sent newspaper clippings to everyone.
She did.
So some of those have been donated, or they've allowed us to copy them. So if something isn't, if someone isn't interested in donating it, but they would give us permission to copy it, we've done that in some cases. As far as photographs, we really don't have much of that there. There's some in Stroud and maybe a few at Chandler, but we don't have that kind of thing. She handwrote, her poems and things, and so she sent a lot of those to multiple people. And I think a lot of people thought maybe those were original things, but I think she copied things over and over and sent them out to various people.
She had a credit at a copy machine place, which I paid for a lot of times. And she would go down there, and then they would bill me. And she would have things copied. And she would say, well, I want to send you this, so I'm going to take it down. I forgot the name of that. It was on this side of the railroad tracks. And then she would say, could I make a couple extra copies? So,
Uh-huh. So are your materials organized that she sent to you?
no.
No. That's a good project then.
Mm-hmm. I'm kind of a collector,
Mm-hmm.
and I am going to go through, and I'm trying to decide whether I'm going to send them to you or send them to Tulare, because people don't save things like they used to. And I look at my family,
Mm-hmm.
and I think Lisa is in stage 4 cancer. She has lost everything that she had because of her husband's illness that took all of their money, everything. Sam is not a saver of anything. I mean, everything is perfect in their house. Aaron is the collector, and so he has a lot of things, and I'll go through. I have a antique carousel that you wind up and it goes around. It's beautiful. My dad gave that to Wilma. I think she was 20 or 21. Anyway, this is what he told me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I get that out at Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I will donate that to you, to the, that would be something that you would enjoy having. It's
Everything I have related to Wilma will go in the archives.
well, I meant
right.
yeah, that
Yeah.
yeah.
That will. We have received donations from people that wanted to donate things
Mm-hmm.
and know that they would be preserved.
Mm-hmm.
And the University of California at Merced Library has quite a bit too.
Oh, okay.
And so she sent things to multiple archives, but I would be happy to discuss that with you more whenever you want to. We don't have to get that on the camera. So, is there anything I haven't asked that you would like to share?
I don't think Aunt Wilma ever flew on an airplane, except with Gary in our little Cessna 182. I could be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
She was just a homebody. She rarely would walk over to Uncle Roy's apartment. He would go over there. I don't know, she was just a special aunt.
Mm-hmm. I just thought of something I was going to ask you. You talked about the flowers. Do you remember what everyone's favorite flowers were, and what are your favorite flowers?
My favorite flowers are daffodils. In fact, I saw a piece of artwork today that I just absolutely love. I think my husband went over and talked to them about it. Grandma liked roses. Now, Wilma, I never really saw her take an interest in flowers. But she could have, I might not have been into that when I was there. She liked it quiet, no music on or radio. So I miss them.
Mm-hmm. Did she have a favorite color?
Kind of a maroon color. She had a couple of hats that were maroon that I would see her wear.
Mm-hmm.
She wore more darker colors, not anything flashy.
Oh, uh-huh.
So.
Mm-hmm. Trying to get my notes. Oh, did you and your father ever go back to Oklahoma?
No, we didn't.
Okay.
It's on my bucket list,
Mm-hmm.
and it has been for a long time to go there, and we will.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this spring.
I think I remember from talking with you earlier was that you used to share Wilma's poems with school children.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that.
Well, having been on the school board for over 40 years and doing lots of extra things with kids,
Mm-hmm.
reading, math, and different things, I always ended my session with some little poem or something, and a lot of them were from Aunt Wilma. And what they really liked were the books that had her art on it. And some of it was from Grandma.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would talk to the kids about relationships with your parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles.
Mm-hmm.
And because that was important to me.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's nice. Yeah. Okay, I don't have any more questions. I thank you very much for the
You're
interview
welcome.
today, and appreciate your time and the fact that you all traveled a long ways to get here.